the possibility that devil fruits are just straight up technology
Yeah.
is definitely like something that's real.
It had minimal spillage.
Like that's
Yeah.
just like a quirky little thing, you
Yeah.
know, like. Welcome everyone to another episode IRL of Drink Sake.
Hello, this is weird. I'm on a podcast. I'm not the host of it for once.
Is this your first podcast, guys?
Oh, how do I podcast again?
Like, don't worry. If you're a bit nervous, I'll guide you through this experience.
Oh God! Thank you for inviting me on this podcast. Hope we have a fun time here.
Exactly. I mean, you can take over. I don't mind. You can guide me.
No, I mean, I'm just excited because I'm on a podcast where we can talk about anime, which I have
never
done before on any other podcast.
So in case you guys don't know, Gond actually, he doesn't talk about it much, but he's really surprisingly passionate about anime.
I am.
And he's been pestering me for like months and months that he finally wants to have like a bit of a creative outlet to talk about it.
So, yes, hi, I'm Gant Giguk. I have a YouTube where I talk about anime, but also I have a podcast where I definitely don't talk about anime.
The anime podcast.
The anime podcast where we don't talk about anime. So anytime I'm on a podcast where I get to talk about anime, I'm like,
let's go.
Oh shit, my time has come.
It's interesting, like you're on the podcast with the anime man, but you're the most.
Well, the anime man has stopped watching anime.
Anime.
Well, we'll see about that. It seems like Joey might be starting to rewatch anime in 2025.
That is what we heard.
Very exciting. Hopefully, I heard he came on your podcast as well.
Yeah.
So hopefully you convinced him to actually catch up
to One Piece. We talked about some of his other stuff. He's been getting more into some shonen stuff, so maybe you guys can dive into that later this year. So as you can see, Gant is zipping on his coffee. We're recording this quite early, but nonetheless, we're
not too early for alcohol.
That is true. Yes. So we're gonna, and I actually upgraded so slowly. Last week, I got this really nice sake bottle, which came without a cork.
Okay.
But also, I ordered these here, and I just thought they were going to be these like I just saw the photo, and I thought they were going to be the regular small ones.
Is this how like fucking Shanks felt?
Whitebeard
drinking with Whitebeard.
This is legitimately. So I'm not going to go too crazy with this. We're just going to come by with it once.
All right.
But I was like, they came. I was like, oh shoot. But then I was like, actually, you know what? These work. These work surprisingly. So drink sake.
Right.
Kampai. It's really hard to drink out of these.
Oh god.
All right, this is gonna go down really well. We're gonna put this back there. This is gonna go down really well with the coffee, I think.
Yeah. Look, I'm just like Zorro. I'm just
drinking all the things.
I'm triple wielding here,
dude. Let's go, and the water, yeah,
and the water as well.
That's crucial. So. First things first. Before we get in, I know we have a lot of stuff to talk about. So I recently went on a very unrelated trip to Ghibli Park, actually.
Oh, okay.
with Emily and Datus.
Okay.
And in Nagoya, we went past the Jump store, which I refused to go in at first because I already knew I was going to spend too much money in it.
That's how it normally is.
They did have a special edition of the One Piece card game.
Oh, no way!
Which I thought could be really fun to just.
How deep are you into the One Piece card game?
Not very deep.
Okay.
Datus back in the day. I'm not remember. I think you were there as well, like the one party where like we did the magic stuff.
Yeah.
I got into it way too deep after
that.
I'd
heard. So we have like a little magic group, and I was a newbie. Like Manu here, and next thing I heard, it was a month gone in, and you'd spent way too much money crafting this deck.
I went too deep. I've been like going to tournaments and stuff, and I think at that point the One Piece card game just had come out, and it like the first impression was just really bad because that was still when they had like anime screenshots as the artwork.
Yeah.
Now it's beautiful. They have custom art, really good. I know it's taken off, but I'm like too deep in one trading card and one TCG already too.
Yeah, I'm kind of like terrified because I can see myself very much getting into this.
Yeah, I didn't know you were into gacha stuff.
It's just like wait, it's different because unlike gacha, you get physical PNGs.
I swear, I'm not sure if you saw the CoffeeZilla one on the Counter-Strike gambling.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Okay, so he did like all series. I was like, honestly, like the booster pack stuff for like all the trading cards games, it's like that's pretty much gambling, if we're being real.
I mean, that's the OG, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in that spirit, I got like this premium, like it's like this special limited edition set that they had in the Jump store.
Okay.
So feel free to choose a
I'm
card.
Get that one. Ooh, I got Nami.
All right.
Live action Nami.
Let's go. Live action Nami.
Awesome.
So these, I mean, I feel like these could be cards because it's like the limited live action set. I could see them potentially going up in value over time.
I mean, we have to wait like a decade. Or
whatever, wait a decade, and then it's probably going to be like a $500 card or something. So you're welcome.
Who knows? I still regret not keeping my old Pokemon cards.
Oh my god!
And just we always. There was always that inkling of like maybe Pokemon cards will go up in value one day. Yeah, and here we are as like adults like 20, 30 years later. We're like, oh my God.
I mean, I remember like when I was in elementary school, we played Yu-Gi-Oh! And probably had some of like the OG set stuff.
Yeah.
I think like maybe I still have some. But even if I still have them somewhere at home with my parents' place, they're probably played to death, like with like bends and everything.
Right.
Like sleeving cards wasn't exactly, I think, something people had in mind back in the days.
I had this really weird interaction because I went back home like a few years ago, and just out of my old city, I met a person from my high school, and to put it in a way that I can say, this person in my school was known for dealing sort of substances. That's what his reputation was.
Gotcha.
Back in the day, this was like decades and decades ago.
Not anymore, hopefully.
No. So I met him in a random bar, and we just had this random. Oh my God, haven't seen you in years, and I'm like, what are you up to nowadays?
Wait, did he just get super rich off of like cards and stuff?
He is dealing Pokemon cards now. he has given up that life to start dealing Pokemon cards.
He's like, guys, I found the real drug.
yeah, exactly, right? Which is just insane to me to think, where it's just like, okay, so you were just, didn't matter what, you just hustle. You just hustle with whatever hots. And the hottest thing right now is just Pokemon cards. That is more profitable than going down an illegal path.
For real.
Which is insane to think about.
That's wild. That is so crazy. I mean, I guess he established his skill set.
Exactly, right?
That is wild. All right, let's bring it a little bit around to One Piece already.
Okay.
Last time we had an IRL episode, we had Joey on, who we already talked about a little bit before the podcast. Shockingly, quite has a lot of catching up to do.
He has a lot of catching up to do. I think he stopped watching One Piece when he stopped watching anime.
something like that, if not even earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
We tried to like convince him a little bit to get back into it. We'll see if that happens. But I do know that you've been like keeping up with it. I've seen you doing tier lists and stuff on your streaming channel.
Yeah, so I would call myself a casual One Piece fan. I talk about it, but I don't so much make content about it, just because there's so many other shows that I make content about, and One Piece is a fucking it is a black hole as it is, with how much stuff is in there.
There's
and
to
how
talk
much,
about.
Yeah, and how much there is to talk about. So I would say like I'm more of a surface level One Piece fan. I just come into it, I catch up every time there's a new arc, and then I, go off and do my own thing until the new arc finishes.
Nice. So you literally read through the entire arc?
Yeah.
Not even volumes, just the entire arc?
Just arcs,
nice.
Yeah. Because I think, so right now I'm basically up to the end of Egghead. So I haven't started the arc afterwards, which is Elbaf, yes. But Egghead was probably the only one where I was not waiting for the entire arc, just because of the amount of massive lore drops
it was.
that were happening in there.
I think it's really interesting because Egghead kind of ended up being what many people wanted Wano to be. And to be fair, I'm a way bigger Wano apologist than some people on the internet. I personally still thought it was a really good arc in many ways, with some obvious weaknesses.
Yeah.
But Egghead just took One Piece, and it kind of revealed a lot of things that I personally had hoped would happen. Kind of this, there is more to this world than we're all seeing.
Yeah.
But actually going there and kind of, in a way, busting the entire One Piece mystery really wide open.
Yeah. It almost like we had like 2 decades worth of like reveals within just one arc in a sense.
But in the like classic One Piece fashion, with every new answering one question, opening up 5 new questions. I think there's this, like, Egghead Island is always, for me, I think in the future going to be a really good argument for people who try to get into One Piece, but it's maybe, especially with the early animation style and the early style of the story.
Yeah.
I think it's a really strong argument where you can tell people like, hey, nothing. It's like One Piece legitimately turned out to be one of these animes where it's like nothing is like it seemed, and at the beginning it's all like casual fun, like things are weird. That's just the world. Turns out no, there's probably an explanation for everything.
Which is why like I've said this before, but I think like One Piece as a story is what has some of the best world building I think in fiction. I think at the point One Piece is at now, it is up there, not just one of the best in anime, not one of the best in manga, but one of the best in like fiction, period. And that is a bold statement, but I do stand by it.
I think it's very, I'm obviously a bit biased as the One Piece YouTuber here, but I totally agree. I think for me, the only other franchise that I'm as deep and as invested in as One Piece is Lord of the Rings, which is obviously the OG when it comes to world. Like, you can't get more world building than inventing your own languages, obviously.
Of course.
And I think One Piece is definitely up there. There is a lot of really interesting parallels recently, actually, between Lord of the Rings and One Piece.
I mean, when you get that deeply into the lore, you know what I mean.
And obviously, it is like the OG fantasy thing that inspired a lot of things. But I'm kind of curious. Did you have, when you got into One Piece yourself, and I'm like actually curious when you started getting into One Piece, but did you expect it to go that route of, okay, like, because again, I think many people who get into the story up to a really late point after the time skip, even, I think most people would go, okay, well, there are some mysteries and there is obviously a lot of secrets to uncover, but like some people are crazy big, there's devil fruits, there's some magic, you know, like that's just how the world works. Did you like, when was the point where you thought, okay, this might be more of a, what's a good example? I think Kill la Kill is a good example of an anime that also has this like, just accept that stuff is weird until suddenly there's explanations for things.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's definitely, I've been a One Piece fan for like ages. So One Piece was one of the first anime I ended up watching. I actually got into One Piece through the 4Kids dubs.
Shout out. I
now recognize how much they butchered the adaptation, but as a kid, even though they were butchering every character, every storyline, completely changing the music, it still hit for me.
Yeah.
And so going from that and then discovering actual One Piece, I was like, oh my God, my mind is blown. So I can say that when I got into One Piece, I'm gonna date this because it was exactly when it was about halfway through Water 7.
Oh my God!
Right at the start of Enies Lobby, the anime. That's how long I've been a One Piece fan.
Best arc, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, we can get into that, but it's definitely like top 3,
top 3 for sure. Top 3 for sure.
But yeah, that was the time I got into One Piece, and for me, One Piece was always weird because I always like the difference between, let's say, One Piece and like other big shonen was like I always felt like One Piece was basically a self-contained anime, like arc to arc, with like repeating characters, with the same repeating characters. Right? You saw, the crew go to a new island, meet completely new people, and then for like the entire first half of the arc, that was basically it. You had like some people like Smoker or Buggy that would come back, but 90% of the cast would be new, and you wouldn't see any returning cast members. And there were some hints about the world, but it was like one line or something like that. You know what I mean?
And I think it was also to a point where you just think, oh, this is just, to make the world in like, oh, there is like talking about Enies Lobby. Oh, there's a big hole in the ocean.
Yeah.
That's just, and it's always day. Like that's just like a quirky little thing, you know, like don't think about it too much.
Yeah. Like I remember, at the end of Alabasta where, Pluto is revealed for the first time. I was like, oh, that's weird. Oh, well, that's never going to get brought up again. And it didn't for
like 10 years.
For like 10 years. And then we'd be like, and I was like, oh, I forgot that was a thing that was mentioned all the way back then.
I think that's been like particularly fun for me with Egghead. Again, without going into spoilers, the same with Elbaf. I think Elbaf is going to be one big arc of like, oh, that's what that was about, pre-time skip. You probably are aware of like a lot of the early hints, especially during Skypiea, which was an arc that many people were like, kind of doesn't fit into the rest of the story. Not sure if I love it or not. I know and I was definitely like fairly skeptical, or not skeptical, but it wasn't like one of my favorite arcs, I would just say. Now it turns out it might have been like the most important arc in the entire story.
there's so much important lore things in there. But I think that is a big determiner between like old One Piece and new One Piece, because one thing that I've seen the rise of is, channels or like just fans who are so invested in the lore and the mystery, and that was like weird for me to see that transition, because before it was all One Piece was all about the arcs, the moments, the everything was like self-contained, and then suddenly you had this huge shift where everyone was like theory crafting and going on into like trying to think about what the mysteries of the world were, and it was. I'm not going to say I prefer one over the other, but it was definitely like a shift in tone, you know what I mean? Or a shift with what the appeal of One Piece is. Not to say that there is one appeal of One Piece, because it's such a fucking vast story. It's
crazy, I think that's part of what makes it so successful over time is you have these layers and layers of different sub-fandoms almost for One Piece.
Yeah.
And even, like, I love the way it's written. You can read this as like a 6-year-old and go into like, fights, let's go, powers. And then you can read it on so many levels. You can just read the fun story. You can go in it for the fights and the powers, which, I mean, fair enough, but it's kind of cool, I think, that depending on how you look at the story, you can go deeper and deeper, and it has these sub-layers of political stuff and mysteries and world building and whatnot, and like little puzzle pieces that you can basically put together.
Yeah, and it's like a puzzle piece that I guess it makes it like fucking amazing for theory crafters, because it's puzzle pieces that literally spread out over decades of media.
And the real magic with One Piece is why it's so hard to theory craft for many other shows. Not saying that there are no shows where you can do it, but obviously the thing that makes One Piece so special is how long it is, and that a very decent chunk of the mysteries have been very clearly pre-planned and preceded by Oda. I'm sure there's exceptions. I think, for example, he himself said that the Worst Generation and stuff like that was stuff that he hadn't like super clearly pinned out how that's going to happen, and they ended up playing a way bigger role. Or even Haki is like a very obvious thing where he had like a concept for that additional power system, but not. Like, you can kind of be like, okay, well, if everyone has like advanced Haki, how is this
I mean, okay, this is gonna come off into like a huge like tangent, but as much as I love One Piece, there are like some points where the fandom can be like, yo, Oda fucking foreshadowed this at like chapter 1. Yo, Shanks had Conqueror's Haki chapter 1, and I'm like, I don't know, the vibe seems off, I
think I would say what happens in chapter 1, where Shanks obviously like subdues this Seeking. I would say it is probably like a piece of foreshadowing for a different power system that Oda had in mind. I just don't think he had Haki particularly planned out.
It almost seems like, in the fandom's mind, everything is just like, okay, this was like 100% pre-planned from like episode 1,
and I think a lot of things are, but just not everything.
I think not everything is, but some things, like the lost century, the void century, and a lot of the mysteries and like the poneglyphs and stuff like that, and they're just like the lore of the world. I think that was planned. I think some of like the finer things with like the power systems and stuff, I'm like, okay, I'm sure it seems like he had like a vague idea about the direction he wants to go, but it wasn't like 100% put down on like,
and I feel like with a long running story like One Piece, it would be kind of a shame if you never added anything on the go, where you're like, what, this would actually be pretty cool to add in. So I think that's just natural, and would be kind of sad to not have it.
Exactly.
But I think it's really cool for the important stuff, like Gear 5, Sun God Nika, like that stuff was in Skypiea, and you had like the early precursors for that. I think obviously you're someone you're probably the person I know who's the deepest into storytelling, like from all the creators I know, which I really appreciate. So you'll probably be the person who can appreciate the most how important, as someone who writes stories yourself, how important it is to have at least the important points figured out at the start, because it makes filling in the gaps and fleshing out, like putting flesh on the skeleton, so much easier.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like, from reading One Piece, it just felt like Oda has this, maybe not the entire story planned out, but the entire world just seems to be something that seems concrete from the beginning. So you might see, some a flash of something in an early chapter that Oda might not have even known when this was going to come back in, but he knew that in the world this specific thing existed.
Yeah.
And then eventually later on in the story, it just felt like, okay, this was like the time to like put it in, and it doesn't matter. I don't think he plans when he's going to be like, okay, I'm going to show you this chapter, then 500 chapters later, I'm going to show you that chapter. It's more just like, okay, this is a thing that exists in the world in this particular time. It will get back to that eventually. And I think that's like magical.
I would agree. I think the reason it feels so, and I'm not saying that Oda isn't Giga Brain.
Oh, he is Giga Brain.
I'm just saying the reason it feels particularly Giga Brain is also because I think he keeps saying that he planned to have the story be way shorter.
Yeah.
And obviously if One Piece had been like a 5-year series where like all these events had been compressed,
yeah,
like still really cool and still like great to have all these mysteries. But I think it feels extra Giga Brain because you have years and years of basically him going on these like little side tangents and like fleshing out things way more than he probably originally planned to.
Exactly.
And then suddenly like something from 12 years ago comes into play again.
Yeah.
And they, that's what we talked about in 2007. That's
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's what the reason that works in the particular example of One Piece is because, first half of One Piece, there was very little lore drops to even talk about. You had like maybe 1 episode, 2 episodes here and there, but most of it was a self-contained arc with maybe 1 or 2 pieces of information that linked the wider world together. And we had very, very little to like feed off of for like the first 10 years of One Piece,
Absolutely. I think it's also the fun part of that when you're experiencing One Piece is you're kind of entering this world like in the East Blue, which is like, if you compare it to anything happening on the Grand Line and then later in stories, like as it's just could also be our world, like some tropical islands,
just
chain, people
world.
Just vibing. There's bad people. There's like, the Navy around. You kind of enter the One Piece world through the eyes of like a very average person.
Right.
And things just escalate from there. And I think that like adds to the because if you had started with crazy lore drops and hinting at crazy stuff right from the get-go, I kind of wonder, would it hit as hard? Because then you're kind of expecting stuff to be revealed and you're looking at the entire story like, ooh, but what's the truth behind everything? But this way, you actually focus a lot, like the characters have to do a lot more lifting in the early parts of One Piece, I think.
Because now I would say there is definitely a mystery aspect to the entire like wider One Piece story. That just wasn't a thing for like decades, we weren't thinking about the mystery of the world. We were thinking about who's going to be the next, the biggest theories were how many people are Luffy going to have in his crew? Who's going to be the next one? Is it
Tengon? Why are you debating this? The comment, I always get 10 people. There are 10
exactly.
Luffy said it in his one panel, so it must be true.
Exactly. Yeah, that was the biggest theory back then. And now it was just like, what is going on with the Void Century?
Yeah.
Who
Did you like because for me, this was the most, and I actually theorized about this potentially being the case, but the fact that it got confirmed, like, blew my mind, and it was, like, one of my favorite things that ever happened in One Piece, even more than Gear 5, maybe, was the reveal in Egghead Island that One Piece is basically this post-apocalyptic world where you had this technologically advanced civilization before.
I did not see that coming because I don't look into theory crafting or anything, so I'm just reading pages. I'm like, no way, that's sick, but that makes so much sense as well because the way that the islands are structured, I'm like, that makes 100% perfect sense. You probably could see this coming if you were like thinking about it. But that blew my mind, and I love that reveal.
Yeah, I think it just opened up so many cool opportunities. There's like some more new reveals in Elbaf also. I just really recently did a whole series trying to theorize a little bit about what happens before the Void Century, because as soon as we got more info about the Void Century, which we were all like, I need to know more about Joy Boy and stuff. Once we got more, I was like, okay, but what happened before? Like, what about Nika and stuff? Like you have like these eras of One Piece where like now we know that, you know, Joy Boy was this character who got born into this advanced civilization, and they were like, you know, like there was a lot of slavery in the One Piece world and whatnot, which makes you ask, okay, well, if that isn't the start of everything, well, you know, what happened before that?
Yeah, what happened before that?
And there are actually, I think, a lot of really cool, you know, hints about that in the story as well, which has been like really fun to dive into. And to me, like having these layers where you have, okay, there's a lot of mysteries in the current One Piece world already. Like we still know so little about Shanks, for example, Dragon, like who's Luffy's mother, all these things. Then we have everything that happened between Luffy and the Void Century itself, and then everything before that. It kind of like keeps, like Oda said obviously that we're now in the final saga, but it almost feels like we're just asking more questions instead of answering.
I mean, it's the difference between, like, I think the final saga for, you know, Luffy's story in a sense, but it feels like the world of One Piece is just so vast that you can finish Luffy's story and still have so many questions about what's, you know, the wider world or the wider lore of One Piece, which is why I think there's going to be when One Piece ends, will One Piece really end?
Will it really end?
Will it really end?
That's the thing. I mean, the beautiful thing about that is, I guess in theory, if you wanted to, you could do tons and tons of prequel and sequel and spin-off stuff. If
I'm
that's
sure
gonna
they
happen,
are going to.
I pray. I mean, it's the Toei Suisha.
It is.
Cash cow.
Come on,
I don't think they're
they aren't going to let it die.
It's really weird as a fan. Also, I'm not sure if you feel the same way. I think there's obviously plenty of people who are like, I want to like have the story end at some point and find out what's happening. I'm more in the boat where I'm like, just keep it flowing. I'm happy to just keep, you know.
Yeah, I
things happening.
One Piece YouTuber right here. Yeah, just hey.
But even as a fan, I will say, I just enjoy, you know, finding things out and then asking new questions and, you know, going on these little side tangents. I don't know. It's just because there is almost nothing like it in media where you keep getting these bits and you like everyone has fun puzzling things together in their own head. I don't know. It's just like such a unique experience. Once you actually have all the answers, it's almost going to be this like,
I mean, I think you know, everything good must come to an end, and it is a wonderful journey, but every journey must come to an end eventually. Hopefully we have another decade or so, maybe another decade. But I would want, you know, at least this story of One Piece to come to an end, just so we can lay it to rest. And I think that's going to be. That's going to be a breaking point for the anime industry and the manga industry.
Very much so. Yeah, I'm very curious, really, what they're going to do at that point. Is it because no way they're going to let the IP go and be like
they aren't. So, as the One Piece expert, how long do you think we have left? Because everyone has different theories. This is the theory I care about.
Wait, let me take a big sip of copium quickly. I always love to say, so obviously you have the classic Oda comments every couple of years where he's like, well, we got like 2 years left. And like, I think the last time he said that was like 4 years ago or something. Yeah. I personally, if I had to bet, I'm not a betting man, but if I were one, I would probably bet money on it lasting at least another 6 to 7 years.
6 to 7 years.
And I would say that's like a minimum estimate. There's like a couple of reasons for it. I think, first of all, just the like how the story has unfolded so far. No way you can tell all of Elbaf, then whatever comes potentially between Elbaf and Laugh Tale. Like you still have I'm not sure if you remember the Roadstar Island or Lodestar, which is like a whole thing that got teased, which is the official last island of the Grand Line. So that's still possible. You have finding the One Piece itself. You have you probably remember the panel also with the 10 characters competing for the One Piece.
Yeah.
All these fights going down, toppling the world government, defeating Emu, fighting Blackbeard, whatever, like reuniting with Shanks. There's so much happening. Like, you're not telling me that after spending 4 years in Wano.
4 years for one island.
We're squeezing that into 4 years. So that's one thing. The second thing is that One Piece over the last year or two has very slowly crept into Togashi area, where we're not at that point, luckily, but we went from a chapter usually every single week, and with the occasional break, to we switched to then 3 chapters in a row, a break. Then now at the moment we're realistically getting 2 chapters a month. January actually is is a bit of an exception where for the first time in I think forever we're getting 3 chapters in a row.
Right.
Usually it's more like 1 or 2. So the frequency has gone down. Yeah. The stuff to explore has gone up. We're just what we talked about. We opened more questions.
Yeah.
Instead of like closing more stuff. So I would argue that realistically, like 6 or 7 years is like the earliest. Like if now suddenly you really started working hard towards that end.
Yeah, that's about what I feel as well. I'd say now that Oda's getting involved with like more projects, especially with stuff like the live action stuff, that it's taken time out of his work schedule. I was like, I could see it for 10 years.
Oh,
you know,
easy.
I could see it for 10 years, and everyone's gonna be happy with that. You know.
You mean unlike the Jujutsu Kaisen fans who are like, can we please end this show?
Yeah, can we please
go to the end?
Just let me have my memories of this.
Did you finish JJK?
I haven't finished JJK.
Right.
I'm an anime only. I've only the one thing I know about JJK is through the memes and through the reactions.
I never had my heart broken as badly as with JJK.
Oh no! Yeah. But that I saw the same reaction for the My Hero Academia fans as well.
Oh yeah.
I just think it's like a cycle. Every time there's a big shonen that comes to an end. Not that I've read the JJK manga ending, but I remember like a similar reaction when like Naruto ended and when Bleach ended.
So I think this is something I've observed recently a little bit with long running shows having a really hard time sticking the landing.
Yeah.
Talking about JJK, My Hero, recently Oshinoko.
Yeah.
It's had like a really weird, quick, abrupt ending too, even though that was really good. I mean, Bleach was kind of forced, I guess. Is that something you're more optimistic about when it comes to One Piece?
Oh, most definitely. One Piece, I think part of the big reason why a lot of shows, when they, at least a lot of manga, when they specifically air at that time, people feel dissatisfied is when you have like a chapter to tie up every loose end. A lot of the times that is not enough time, right? And I saw this happen recently with My Hero, where the chapter dropped, and then everyone thought it was bad, and then the epilogue chapter dropped, and everyone's like, "Okay, this makes it a little bit better." Yeah. And I think like the core gut reaction is that you have one chapter to send off everything, send off decades worth of like characters and build up and storylines, and one chapter isn't going to be able to realistically do that. One thing I do think that about One Piece is that they are going to have the time to, it might not even be one chapter. We can have like whole spin-offs giving people.
I was about to say, I feel like I would be very sad if at the end of everything we don't get like 20 chapters of epilogue almost.
Yeah, I think epilogues are so underrated. They are the things that, going back to Lord of the Rings, even though
the 5 endings.
Even though don't some people know this, I haven't seen all 3 Lord of the Rings movies yet.
Insane.
I know.
So wild.
I know. But I've heard about the epilogue for like the final film of that, how it just lasted like forever and ever. And I think more media needs that. I think more media, especially if you have like a big epic, give time once the main conflict has been resolved to just let it all sink in. Especially
if you like, it's not even a big risk. Like, just do it for shows where people are in love with these characters.
Yeah.
Like, if it's just like some show and you kind of know like, people were mostly here for the action or for the romance or whatnot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, maybe we don't need to see it. Like, even then, I think having like a little bit of a wrap up and like seeing what everyone's up to is nice. But especially for shows where, I mean, you can talk about Game of Thrones and stuff like that, where like, people have been invested in these characters for years and years. No one's gonna complain if we're gonna get like 3 chapters of Usopp doing his thing, like I think more the opposite. People would love to just get more, even like slice of life stuff, even potentially.
Yeah, and I think there's I don't know if there's this fake expectation or that there's just this expectation where the final episode has to be the resolution of the major plot line.
We get out of there,
and then we have like a few panels of just like, okay, and then everyone's happy now, and I'm like, no, show me. I would like to know.
Show, don't tell.
I've seen the entire story and the entire journey of all of these characters. Please give me time to see. Give me the same amount of time just to see where they end up. Because there's an anime that I really enjoy. It's an anime original called like Recreators.
Oh yeah,
heavy action oriented anime. But they had like one entire episode of just epilogue, and it's I kind of like realized watching that how rare it is just for an anime studio to just commit to having one whole episode, no action, no plot development, just closing down storylines. And I think more manga and more anime need that.
Yeah, I think stories in general, like not only that, even like when you look at TV shows, I'm like trying to think like How I Met Your Mother or something like that, like butchering the landing, right? And then instead of giving us, like a little bit, like we've been waiting for this, like show us a little bit of it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not like, and they're happy, and then she died. Spoilers, bro. but again, I agree. I feel like closure, like giving your audience closure, is so underrated. I feel like it's, interestingly enough, something that like maybe I'm me as a YouTuber at least, I'm maybe a little bit guilty of, and I'm not sure how you look at it. It's very rare to have like a little bit of like people taking the time for like closure on videos as well. I think the common wisdom is like let's get out of here. It does not hurt the retention, or let's rush into the next video or something. But
yeah, I mean, on some of my videos, I think this is just my like content philosophy, where I always want my videos, for the most part, especially on the projects I really care about, for the most part, I want the ending to feel like an ending,
giving closure.
Yeah, like I recently, especially one of like my best of anime videos that I kind of like do a review of the whole year of like some of my favorite stuff. I want the ending of that video to feel like a closure of like my closure of the year of anime, and I always try to convey that to my audience as well. So I care a lot about the endings. I don't think a bad ending will necessarily, it depends series to series. It depends on how it is. Some people think one bad ending ruins the entire journey. I don't agree with that necessarily, but I do think that a fantastic ending can elevate a series to like a whole new level.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you to a certain degree. I think that if a ending is particularly bad, it has the potential, I think, to break a show. Again, I think Game of Thrones might be the best example of that, where just rush, like, well, I guess in that case, you also, the end, like that last season or the last two seasons, kind of. Again, I'm not sure if you even watched.
I watched Game of Thrones.
It was not only because if the ending had just been Bran becomes king because whatnot, and like it had been the same story plots, but you had fleshed it out more potentially, and it was true to the characters. Like even if you personally thought, that's not the most exciting option, I think you'd still be like very happy, and like that's just what happened in the story. I think it's once you start breaking your established characters and established rules of your own universe I mean, again, going a little bit, as much as I love Naruto, when you start suddenly having aliens and like a completely different power system and everything, and you're like, what's happening?
Yeah.
I think that has the potential then to break a lot of the legacy you've built up and the trust and obviously emotional capital that you've built up with your audience.
Yeah, and I guess those are two interesting examples you brought up, because a lot of people will come to Game of Thrones as like the example of a bad ending. And I don't think that's the example of a bad ending. That's the example of a bad multiple season run. That was not like this is an S tier show, D tier show. Yeah. This was like an S tier show that slowly declined, and I'm talking about, it's some people who, I guess, another ending that is controversial, like Attack on Titan, for a lot of people, that ending I've seen had ruined the entire journey of Attack on Titan. And I think number one, I don't think the ending of Attack on Titan was like bad. I can see why people had problems with it, because I also had problems with it. But regardless, that final episode, no matter what happened, wouldn't have ruined the entire like other part of the journey of that for me.
Right.
Even if it was like the worst of the worst, in my opinion.
I mean, I think, again, bringing that point all the way back to One Piece, I think we can all agree that no matter how good and perfect the ending is, like 60% of the audience is not gonna like it.
Yeah, exactly. you can't satisfy everyone.
Yeah, I will say if everyone is happy with how One Piece ends, then that's the real magic that Oda's gonna have.
No way!
Like
that's when you know Oda is a genius if he's able to like stick the landing and have everyone agree.
Well, because there's like a bunch, and I actually want to hear your thoughts on these. There's like a bunch of things that are gonna, to a certain degree, have to be revolved. Like we're gonna need to get an answer to certain things. For example, what is actually the political like? Because obviously One Piece has been getting more and more political and has had the sublayer. What do you think is the political messaging in one? Is it like is the ideal thing at the end going to be? Is it well, Imu was the bad ruler, but you know, someone like Vivi comes in and they're like the good like the good autocrat.
Yeah.
Is it going to be that? Is it going to be democracy? Is it going to be just like Luffy, complete like anarchy? Everyone just is free and does whatever like they want to do.
Yeah, I'm not sure myself, because I would like to think that something along these lines when it comes to like the final political message, where the world ends up after whatever happens when they find One Piece is going to happen. The one thing that I think that One Piece does fantastically is building up that there are no like good side or bad side. You know, every side has ideals that they live by and that they believe in, and there are other sides of that same team even that maybe do things a little bit shadier and get portrayed as, you know, quote unquote a bad guy, you know. And I think I'm not sure if there is going to be one message that kind of like rises up and trumps all in terms of like the final Oda going, here is what I think is the right solution to everything. I think that it might be a little bit more nuanced and a little bit more complicated than that. We'll have to see. But
I could see that one potentially interesting way to do it would be to just avoid being like, this is how the world should actually be, and rather being like, well, there's going to be some new system, like who knows if it's perfect, but
yeah,
you kind of, as you say, I think it's really interesting that in One Piece now more and more characters are kind of turning morally gray, which I love, but you clearly have Luffy as this personified ideal of a person, right? Like good-hearted, free spirited, you know, very like brave, doesn't fear anything.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder if the punchline at the end is going to be that, well, you know, like in the end, be more like Luffy to, you know, like whether you're like whoever you are, just if you're like kind to people and fight for people who are suppressed, like that's kind of the way to, and I think that would maybe be like the smartest way you could.
Yeah. I mean, I could also see it as, you know, it kind of like, maybe nothing much. How can I say this? Maybe it's like the ending is that Luffy is the one that inspires the next generation, and part of a big part of One Piece is this idea of like legacy and passing ideas on to like the next generation and inherited will. And I could also see equally, and like an ending that I would think could work really well is that, you know, what Gold Roger did for the next generation, Luffy is also that catalyst for whatever the next generation comes to as well, because as you know, as great as Luffy is as a character, he's not going to be the one that is able to himself think about the way to solve all the different conflicts and all the different ideological.
Well, he is a god now.
Yeah, I mean, he is a god now. He is a god. You know, other people are going to solve that around Luffy, who he inspires, you know.
Which kind of brings me to my second One Piece ending question. Do you think it is more likely that Luffy will have his little epilogue? Or do you think it's more reasonable to assume that Luffy, once he actually fulfills his dream and his goal, and he's this like super idealist, like personified ideal, is it more realistic that he just dies or sacrifices himself at the end?
I don't know. That's a loaded question, and because I feel like if Luffy dies, that would be too predictable. I don't know.
You think so?
I don't know. I think. Luffy dying, I don't know if that would be on theme for the character or on brand for the character.
I'm just wondering, like, I think the reason I bring it up is I have a bit of a hard time, I guess, imagining we just saved the world, you know, we have peace, the corrupt government is has been defeated and everything. Like we made it.
Yeah.
And then we just have Luffy, like, is it just going to be Luffy chilling in a bar or something? Or, like, traveling
He's like,
around?
well, I found One Piece.
I'm done.
My life is over.
Exactly. Like, I guess the reason I bring it up is always, like, Luffy's entire being has been and will always be like, his journey and becoming Pirate King. So once it's actually achieved, it's almost this, like, what's left?
Well, let me tell you. We go into space. We start the One Piece space age.
Yo, I will say, not an unrealistic possibility
now
that's
with,
gonna
advanced technology.
That's gonna happen in the story.
Look, we saw what happened to Naruto.
Have you read the manga also? Or have you just watched the anime?
I've only read the manga. Well, I watched the anime up to I think after the Whitebeard War arc.
All right, but do you know about the Enel cover story on the moon?
I've heard a little bit about it. Yeah.
Well, because basically the entire thing there is Enel goes to the moon. There's strangely enough atmosphere on the moon, which I think originally everyone was just like, oh, it's One Piece, who cares?
Yeah.
But like now it's more like, like, why is there atmosphere on the moon? And then he finds this ancient city, and he finds out that, like, the Sky People came down from the moon because they ran out of resources.
Right.
And that the One Piece planet got colonized with these, like, ancient technology, and you have the Mother Flame that, like, powered every... So... Yeah. And then there are actually space pirates in One Piece. So, and like I think at first everyone was just kind of like, oh, quirky, fun little side story. Yeah. But like now with all the recent reveals, it's more like, are we gonna go to space? Are we gonna go to the moon?
Okay, as a One Piece expert, because I know about the cover stories, but have they ever become like relevant, or have they like at this very point just been like funny, kind of like side story kind of things?
I think yes and no. So there are like a few that are pretty cool. We got one for Jinbei where he kind of is like on his little adventure before he reunites with the Straw Hats in Whole Cake Island, and we see him finding these underwater ruins and finding a poneglyph underwater, and then, well, turns out the world got flooded really hard. So there's like these pieces of lore hidden in them.
Right.
We had Ace chasing after Blackbeard. There was like some interesting things in that storyline. Right now we have one for Yamato, which I personally don't really know where that's going in Wano.
Right.
It feels very random, but I'm sure there's going to be a bit of a punchline at the end. So I think some of them have had a big impact. I think the NL one is by far the most interesting one because of all the lore implications that it has.
Yeah, or it could just be Oda trolling. We will.
Yeah.
We'll know when we'll know, I guess.
We will know when we'll know. I'm pretty sure that it's going to be relevant. I'm not sure if NL himself... So I recently was thinking about making an NL video on the channel.
Oh, yeah?
And I told people how badly they want NL to be back. Turns out people don't really care all that much.
I think it would be pretty interesting to bring him back, because you think about NL, when he was introduced within the context of the story, and you think about it now, you think, damn, NL was pretty damn OP. He just very unluckily ran into literally the one
his
person
hard
in
counter,
the world,
yeah.
His literal hard counter, and you're like, damn, you got some bad
lucky.
RNG, man.
Or like arguably also the only enemy that Luffy didn't actually defeat in that sense. He just kind of went away and did his thing. I think like another really interesting thing with NL tying into Elbaf, I think why people think he might be coming back now is again very. I guess because being the One Piece YouTuber, you have these like tiny little lore hints, but it's you have like the different sky races, and the sky race that the Sky Island that Enel came from, Burka. Mm-hmm. Like we know that he destroyed his own home island. We also know that there is this like the Straw Hats did the knock upstream thing, but there's this official entrance to the Sky Islands.
We've talked about that they've talked about, but never got to like kind of.
And
like
so
revealed.
The idea is kind of like, is Elbaf with the giant tree? Is that potentially the gateway to the Sky Islands? And are we going to have like a reintroduction to these characters, and like the character like Urush, who is like from the same tribe as Enel in that arc? So we'll see.
That'll be interesting. Yeah, it's insane to think how much Skypiea has just come back into relevancy.
It is. Yeah, it's been really fascinating.
Yeah, I'm curious. Like, when did you get into like One Piece? At what point did you jump on this One Piece train?
Yeah,
in terms of, like the lore side.
I'm not sure if we ever talked about like if we ever had this conversation. Like I'm like a very late bloomer when it comes to anime and manga in general. Like I remember when I was maybe like middle school or something, sometimes I'd come home from school and be at my grandma's place or something.
Yeah.
And just watch a bit of TV, and there was like an episode of One Piece and an episode of Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh or Naruto or something. So I like catch very occasionally like an episode here or there, but like out of context. I didn't get into anime in general until end of high school, first year of uni actually, where I kind of like ran out of stuff to watch, and I saw Naruto was available for free, and I was like, isn't that for kids? And I was like so bored. I was like, you know what? I'll give it a go. Watched all of Naruto that was available up to that point in like a week, and then I was like, I need more things that have a lot of episodes. Went into One Piece, went into Bleach, and then just like watched caught up on like everything I could get my hands on anime wise. But One Piece was the first anime that made me want to go, I kind of don't want to wait for the next episode. I want to read the manga and see what's happening. And it became just, this weekly tradition of I'm going to read the chapter. At some point I found YouTube also surprisingly behind the curve, something for me, but found YouTube, started like, listening to people's reactions to the chapter, and like watching little videos, and that was kind of a little bit my routine when I first came to Japan. Actually, in 2018, I had like an internship here during my master's, and my routine was just like take the bike to my internship, and on the road I would just like maybe don't do that when you're biking on the road, but I just like listen to like some One Piece review or some One Piece video.
Okay.
And after half a year leaving Japan for the first time, I knew I wanted to do some YouTube stuff, and I didn't want to show my face. I was like, okay, so I'm not going to do any vlog type content.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm really passionate about right now?
I love this One Piece thing, man.
And I was like, I'm curious, like, would people be interested in hearing like my thoughts on the chapters and the story? So that's kind of how that started. It was really more of me wanting to do videos. That was like one of the things I was most passionate about at the moment.
So when you got into One Piece, at which point of the story was it at?
So when I caught up with it, we were just at like transitioning from Punk Hazard to Dressrosa.
Oh,
yeah.
So when Joey stopped,
I started.
Yeah, he passed on the torch.
Yeah, to you. I felt the spirits. Yeah, I was like, I heard Australian voice in the back of my. Like, all right, mate, go.
Go fucking read One Piece.
Fucking read One Piece, right? Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't know. Like, obviously, the plan was not to turn this into a full-time job.
Of course.
How was it for you, actually? I'm really curious. I've never heard your YouTube origin story.
Oh, my YouTube origin story? So this was in 2007. So over 15 years ago now.
That is like, what is it, 2 years after YouTube got created?
Yeah, 2 years after YouTube got created. I had some exams. I had a math exam I was meant to be studying for, and it was for this thing called A-levels, which I guess is the closest to like the SATs or something, but it's the one you take before going into college.
I know about it because my best friend in Germany in high school, he switched school. Like, he actually went to England to graduate there. Something he like never forgave me, because I always promised that I'd visit him. But I guess like, I was writing my own finals. And he just never came up. And like to this day, he's not forgiving me that I never visited him. And whenever like we talk about like, our final exams in Germany, he's like, well, the A-levels actually technically probably even better. I'm like, all right, thanks for reading.
Okay.
All right, I got you. Anyway, sorry,
yeah, and so I was studying for a math exam, and I didn't want to do it. So I just like, I'll just procrastinate. And I just procrastinated by just
working.
By literally, I wanted to talk about anime, and I'd wanted to do this for a while because I had like no friends to talk with about anime. And arguably I still don't, but no, I had no friends back then that I could like nerd out about anime. So I'd always wanted to do like YouTube videos, and I had like reviewers that kind of like inspired me. So I was like, I can do the same thing for anime, I think. So I literally scripted, recorded, and edited this basic ass video on Windows Movie Maker, just like using like just pictures to like go along with what I'm saying, not even like anime clips. And I uploaded that. And I got 5 views, bro, and one
Let's
comment.
go.
And that one comment just fueled me, man. I was like, yo, this feels amazing.
What did it say?
It just said it was a review of Bleach, actually. And it was
still up?
It is still up, and it was a comment on like one of my jokes, and I was like, oh, this is what it feels like. And then I remember I got one message being like, because I just did one video, and then months passed, I got like one message when YouTube still did messages being like, yo, are you ever gonna make another one? And I'm like,
let's go.
Okay, well,
I will.
Got my own fan message, and now fucking 18 years later, here I am. I guess it just it was something that I did throughout university, throughout high school. I stopped because back then you couldn't make this a job, and then afterwards I got a real job, and then this person called the Anime Man came along and started like blowing up on the anime side of YouTube, and I was like, wait, people can make money off this? I should come back. I need to come back. This Australian dude thinks he's the top anime YouTuber.
Like, nah, man.
No, ain't no way. I got to come back.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool background. It's like, I didn't know that you kind of went back.
Yeah, because I remember back in the day, I was like, I became like the top. I found like the ceiling of like anime YouTube as a whole, and the ceiling was 100,000 subscribers, and you know that was before monetization, and so that was the ceiling. I didn't see any growth, and then I stopped, and then Joey completely like smashed through that ceiling, which was like, I'm happy that Joey did that, because that showed me that anime as like a medium had just like grown massively since I'd like stopped doing YouTube. So that allowed me to come back on YouTube and start doing anime content again.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I mean, obviously now the ceiling has grown even.
I don't know if I would say it's grown, because it's
very fractured.
It's very fractured now. So I'd say obviously anime as an entire medium has grown, but in terms of like there are like different types of like anime audiences now. One Piece, for example, is its own bubble, its own audience, and you have what I call the people who are aware of this site called My Anime List, you know, where you have seen more.
Frieren is the best.
Yeah, exactly. You have seen more than just the shonen. You are more aware of like the wider world of anime, but you are not like deep into like the nerd like soccer side of things. And then now there's like people who only watch shonen as well. That's its own bubble as well. And
I guess even the type of content you consume about anime, obviously like people who just consume anime, then the people, I guess it already takes you a step deeper if you're consuming content about anime on the internet, right?
Yeah.
But even there, I feel like it's been really interesting. I mean, I think I'm very jealous that you've like built so much good, like your content is obviously such high level. I know how much work you put into each video, and then you have obviously a really good personality. I think Trash Taste obviously was a really nice extra step on bringing that out.
We'll see about that.
Well, at least I think so. I would say.
Thank you.
And I think that's a really, really smart move, particularly with like in the last year or so. I'm sorry to say this. I know you're a really big fan of AI and crypto, so this might come across hurtful to you.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if you've seen this. There have been a lot of AI channels just popping up in anime, but also obviously like another like the science space and all these.
It's just popping up everywhere.
It's popping up everywhere.
It's just, especially on like shorts, where you just have these entire channels that just basically summarize an entire anime or summarize an entire series. I'm not sure if it's gone into like the theory crafting side of YouTube yet.
I think that's obviously harder because I mean I guess you can summarize other theories or do like I think I've seen videos like highlight the best theories like about this or that, but it's obviously harder to actually go in and craft yourself with AI because AI is pretty bad at that, I think. But you have a lot of I think I've seen the video 10 facts you didn't know about Luffy, like made by 250,000 different channels at this point.
Is that like the top 5 places you didn't know about Japan? Is that the One Piece equivalent of
10 things not to do in Japan? Kill people. Yeah, the classic.
Why Japan is living in 2035.
I got a really concerning email recently in my business email, and I got that email 3 or 4 different times from that saying, they were like, you haven't reacted to our email. And I was even like considering making a video about it, but maybe this is a good point. Like they were basically offering like a respectable amount of money to license off all my videos and train their new AI on it. God. And I guess the idea behind it is they're buying, license rights to people's, which I guess props that they're even asking.
I mean,
but
at least they are asking for consent, unlike before, where they would just be training AI models using videos for, I believe, the subtitling process.
But like the fact that, because it sounded to me more so that they're trying to train AI that basically like AI is just going to make the video for you completely. And I think that's such a dystopian thought to me.
Yeah.
I don't know, getting that email and then getting like 2 or 3 pings like, hey, you didn't reply to our email. Like, did you think about the money though? I was like, like Sid's really like doesn't really sit well with me, and I don't know. I'm like really like, do you feel personally after like I think the crazy hype of last year has died down a little bit about like video generated AI stuff and images and so on and so forth, and obviously ChatGPT.
Yeah,
I do think we're obviously going to see more of it. I'm just kind of questioning more and more, is AI capable of actually creating a creative video from scratch that hasn't been made before? And I think the answer so far, at least, is no, as far as I can see. It can. I think obviously what you're going to have is like explainer videos and basically like conglomerating information that's already out there. But how do you see that entire development?
So I actually think AI is very, very capable of making some types of content at right now.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. There are, YouTube's gone through a lot of phases, and there have definitely been some phases where YouTube has, there's a lot of slop content where I'm like, you know what? I know a person made this, but an AI could have made this as well. I'm not gonna lie, So I think that kind of content will definitely get more and more like replaced with like, at least maybe not 100% AI generated content, but at least at the very least, it's going to be AI assisted.
I would not be surprised though, honestly, because you already have at the moment still fairly obvious AI voice stuff. But I would not be surprised in like a year from now or 2 years from now if you just watch a video for like 10 minutes, there's a guy on camera, and then like 10 minutes in you're like, wait, is that guy not real? That guy? And I think that's going to happen for sure. We just have, because right now most of the AI stuff is obviously faceless. But I feel like you're going to get to the point where what you have with the Instagram models that aren't real, right? You're just going to have YouTubers who are legit just AI generated people.
So what I think is going to happen is there is going to be at least like the slop content on YouTube is probably, I mean, it's AI slop versus just slop, versus human generated slop. I think we are going to get flooded with that, and I do think that there is always going to be, at least I look at this from my perspective, I'm always going to look out for the human connection. Right? I'm always going to look for that when it comes to like my creators. And I think on a YouTube perspective, that is what makes creators stand out on YouTube. As much as like we watch like more and more, we watch what I call like, just second monitor stuff, where it's like we're just putting something on just to put something on. That is background, that is the background stuff. That is the kind of content that I think, we should be afraid of getting replaced by AI.
Even that, though, I feel like if I put something on while I'm cooking or something, I'd rather put on a podcast of like people talking rather than, I don't know, like some random explainer video about something.
See, I'm trying not to go too doomer here, where everything's going to be replaced by AI. Because I know I'm always going to search up for like the human connection with things, and I think that side of content is going to be very, very hard to replace by AI. Just because that human connection is such a big part of YouTube. But in terms of just random things that you scroll up and you end up going viral or just one-off videos that you might get recommended. I think that might be we are going to see a big uptick of like AI content.
I mean, it already is,
and it already is, and it's only going to get better. You know, this is the worst it's going to be.
I do agree. I think if you wanted to have like a bit of a, I mean, unless you are someone, the viewer is someone who like is like, I don't really care if this was written by ChatGPT or you, like, as long as it's entertaining me. And I think that's a fair take. Me personally, I think it is a bit of a dystopian thought to me personally. I think if you wanted to find like a silver lining in it all, at least for me, it's been kind of forcing myself to look at my own content and be like, like, does my content lack a little, like, could it, you know, use a bit more personal connection and obviously like more personality where maybe before you'd make a video and like, at least my content was in parts is still very focused just on One Piece, because I kind of grew the channel from the perspective like people come for One Piece, not necessarily for me, and that's kind of what I focused on. But again, if you have potentially, like, you could just write that video, maybe it's not as well researched or not as cohesive, but fundamentally the same video that you can just write with ChatGPT. Like, the thing that would really make it stand out is, as you say, finding that connection where, you know, like, my passion for One Piece, I think is the thing that would truly like connect with someone, and not necessarily like the content of a particular video, right?
Itself. Yeah, and I think that's going to be more and more important moving forwards, because it is going to get, because we're not just competing with other creators, we're competing against, you know, machines as we go forward.
Companies increasingly also,
Yes, and companies as well. So just try, you know, one thing I found out was just showing my face on like different media and different platforms just made my image just grow a lot, just because before I was just a disembodied voice through anime footage. And even though I had like my own brand, my own jokes, when I shared my face, then I found like the audience had like a much closer connection, even though I was doing it on a completely different channel, you know.
Yeah, I think it just gives you something to anchor yourself to. And again, I think, I mean, now we're getting really off topic, but I personally do think we're in the next few years going to see as like, you know, all the AI stuff keeps growing and growing, and, you know, you're on, I mean, I'm not sure who is still on Twitter, but if you're on Twitter and you don't know, like, you know, am I interacting, like, am I getting angry at a bot right now?
You actually don't know.
Yeah, legitimately. Yeah. I could see a world where like, for example, I personally don't think it would be a bad move, at least for creators, if you didn't want to do it for users, but just for creators to be like, hey, you actually need to show up somewhere IRL with your ID and be like, this is me, this is my account, verify me, and then your account has like a little check mark with like, this is a real person who showed up, and like we know like he is flesh and blood. And I think for me at least that would be, I mean, maybe to some people that sounds like scary or weird, but I do feel there's going to be an increasing demand possibly for actually being aware, even if it's voluntarily, you know, knowing that, oh, I'm talking to a human being right now. Is, I think, going to be more valuable, or I'm consuming content that a human being may.
And I don't think that need for human connection is going to go at all. You know, the more that we interact with bots, the more that we're going to crave something that is like a real human interaction. And so I think the space is going to evolve from there, where, you know, as a creator, you have to really, really think about, okay, how do I stand out from, you know, what part of my content is stuff that can technically be done by an AI, and what part really feels personal to me.
When I think there are things also, again, I feel like it's the way that you use it. For example, I think for me, I sometimes use ChatGPT like very reasonably for example, asking like, hey, when I'm theory crafting, I'm like, hey, there's this Japanese word, you know, this character has this Japanese term, like, can you tell me what this means? And then maybe like some ties to mythology and stuff like so. For researching purposes and just, you know, like getting an overview over something, it can be helpful. And I think that's maybe like the best way to use it also is like, instead of using it for the creative part and the human part of the content, use it for the researching section, which like maybe before you'd scroll through like websites and Wikipedia, and now you're like, okay, like I can actually, you know, is there some mythology tied to, like when we bring it back to One Piece, the demon spider, right, that Saturn is, you know, like, oh, you know, suddenly I have like an article and what's the lore behind that and stuff like that.
This is why I've never made content on One Piece. Despite being an anime YouTuber, I've always had like several ideas about like if I did a One Piece video, what would I want to do? And every time I came up with something, I was like, nah, this is too small in scale. Like this doesn't distill my love of One Piece, and I can't do it because it is such a vast world. I mean, like even recently, I felt bad that I couldn't because I was doing like a best of anime, and I really wanted to talk about the One Piece fan letter. Because because it's not a series, it's a 20-minute like short film, but it is
so good. One
of my favorite pieces of media to come out of last year, and it is technically filler. You know, it's not really filler, but it's something that doesn't that is not pertaining to the manga.
I love to talk about that particularly. I think any content that show like the fact that they managed to take these like crazy events of the war and kind of showing that from the everyday like Jack was so good because it's
such a good concept.
And I almost wish that they did that in the actual, like, again, instead of going on a break, like if you actually want filler content, do more stuff like that, you know, like putting things into perspective. Because when everyone in the anime right now, right?
Yeah.
Everyone, when they step down, the ground shatters. And like, showing stuff from like the average Joe, like the average citizen, and being like, yo, these are just literal monsters going crazy.
And it kind of like humbles you.
It does.
Because you look at those scenes, like the scenes where like the brothers in like the Whitebeard War arc, and you kind of feel like, damn, they are just helpless ants. And then you realize
they're just being trampled, literally.
Wait, if I was in the One Piece world, I would like to be like a Luffy or a Mihawk or something. Nah, I'm that guy. Yeah. I'm fine for my life just being around these people, man.
You're just like walking and talking natural disasters around.
Can you imagine? What is the insurance policy in the One Piece world? That's what it made me think about. Imagine you're just living your life, and then all it takes is one bloody pirate to come along and have one bad bar fight, and then that's it. Your town is totaled. You know,
just like a walking nuke, basically. And then again, I think that's really fun to think about when you go back to like the East Blue and like the West Blue, all these like oceans where people don't even believe that devil fruits are real. And then suddenly you have like a Whitebeard or something just leveling entire like islands.
I would like to I would love to see what kind of conspiracy theories go on in the one. Can you imagine the level of conspiracy theories in the One Piece world?
My God, is like there's people who can make entire earthquakes. They're like, yo, you've been Pop's been out drinking too much.
It's like Pluto isn't real. Pluto is government propaganda that is being spread around by pirates. It's
really interesting. I feel like all these I mean, you kind of have the propaganda piece too with News Morgans.
You do, right?
Who's just kind of like running like public perception on everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really fantastic. Like, again, I kind of love these little nuggets of like IRL things that we think about in the real world, kind of how that's integrated into One Piece as well.
Yeah, because it's, you know, One Piece, the thing I love about One Piece is, as you said, it's a story that can be appreciated by children, but also there's so many different layers there's so many complexities that can be appreciated by adults as well. In terms of like, you know, the philosophical and ideological battles going on between different factions. It's such a treat to see how much One Piece has evolved from just Rubberman punch bad guy,
punch hard. Yeah. I'm kind of curious also, again, I'm not sure if you've heard about the new Studio Wit remake that they're going to do, the One Piece.
I have.
Very, very curious, again, because I feel the biggest hurdle I see at the moment for people who do want to get into One Piece, I think the two things, obviously, like the number of episodes, but I think the bigger hurdle is actually people trying to get into it, but then you kind of like watching, you know, the like slow-paced, early, like made in the late 90s episodes of One Piece, and maybe you're like 17 and you're like you've been growing up with Demon Slayer and you're like
One Piece has not aged well. The One Piece anime has not aged well, and I've seen the One Piece anime several times, and every time I watch it I forget how slow it can be sometimes. And that is, I think it's obviously a meme that the One Piece anime hasn't ended and we're already getting a remake of the One Piece anime.
But
I think it's sorely needed because I've had like a few, the One Piece IP has grown so much that, you know, I think the live action did wonders in selling people on the world of One Piece to just a normal Netflix audience.
And I think it was a really good concept, as you say, that the world building and the characters, they have like very, very strong appeal. Like in 2025, it is really the presentation that matters there. And so I'd agree. I think like even though you can meme about it a little bit, I think having this fresh, you know, coat of paint on the story with like a more modern approach. I'm really anxious, honestly, how it's gonna look like visually. Also,
right?
Like the first things that we've seen is like more this like manga-esque, kind of art style, which I think is like can be really good. I was personally hoping for something more like Chainsaw Man-y or something, you know, like actual. Realistic art.
Well, I really the team that they got involved in WIT is like the A team of WIT. You know? They got the goats to make this One Piece remake. So I have no doubts that it's going to look incredible. But like, you know, on like the wider scale and wider appeal, like I had my like after the live action got released, my cousin actually watched it, and he has zero interest in anime or like One Piece or anything. He knows that I'm like the anime guy in my family. So I get a message one day being like, yo, I watched this One Piece anime. It's weird, but I kind of want to watch more. I heard this was an anime, and I'm like, and he asked me, should I watch the anime? And I'm like, if you, funnily enough, if you got interested in One Piece because of the live action, I don't think going to the anime is the right move. And because he is, I hate using this word, a normie, I don't think I could convince him to read the manga, which is what I would actually say now if someone was interested in One Piece. I would recommend them to read the manga.
I totally agree, which says something because I tend to be more of an anime person.
No, same here.
Like, again, One Piece is one of the few stories where I'm like, the manga is just a lot. I mean, and that goes like, I have full respect for what they've been recently doing with the regular anime. They've been definitely upping production, kind of realizing that, you know, like in 2024, 2025, you do need like a better product than what they've been putting out before.
Yeah.
I think the current anime has different problems, or for me has different problems. I know people love it, and I think it's been a lot more fun watching it from a production value, and it's crazy, like the animators and stuff.
Since Wano happened, it seems like they just completely reshaped everything.
I think for me, the bigger issue I have with the anime is the power scaling is just very different from the manga, and everything shatters the entire planet every time. Like Zoro breathes in, and the ground shatters. But no, it's like, so really shout out and props to the anime. But I think the manga, like for One Piece, the manga has just so much more depth, and it has a lot better flow, honestly, just because One Piece is still on that weekly publication schedule for the anime.
Because I think with the One Piece, it's called the One Piece.
The One Piece.
One Piece. I think now that anime for the longest time was on this kind of like, not like weekly release, right? No matter what, you needed to air an episode every week.
Yeah.
And then My Hero came along and was like, oh, wait, what if we just split things into seasons and make things more digestible but condensed, and everything is a higher quality? And then that came along, and I think the industry realized that audiences are fine waiting season to season
for a good product.
Yeah. And I think that's why the One Piece is really what One Piece needs right now for a modern audience. If they want to, God forbid, increase its audience even more than they already have.
And I think there is a lot of potential. Again, I think story-wise, One Piece easily holds up with like the current. I mean, probably because it's still running today, also. But even the early parts easily hold up with like good storytelling, because it just is good storytelling, and it will always hold up if it is a good story, I guess. But they're keeping, a younger audience. Anime is just cool right now in schools and stuff. So you have a lot of new people who maybe see the old art style and like watch like the first 2 or 3 episodes of One Piece right now, and they're like, that's not what I'm used to. But now suddenly you give them a completely new entryway. And I will say I have very different expectations for this than, for example, for the live action, because the live action I went in with like the darkest expectations.
Same here.
And just got very positively surprised. While for the anime remake, I'm going in with the highest expectations. And
I mean, I am going into the anime same with the highest expectations. I was pleasantly surprised with the live action.
Yeah.
So much so that if someone's interested in One Piece and they don't want to read the manga, I would recommend the live action over the original anime. Mm-hmm. And I never thought in a million years that I would ever say that, because damn, does the live action make the appeal of One Piece very, very digestible very, very quickly.
I talked about this with Joey when we talked last time, and also like a bunch of other people, especially when the first season came out. Surprisingly to me, I think people who were already into One Piece, people liked it, and they were like, oh, they didn't butcher this is good, this is fun, nice, good job.
Yeah.
The people who liked this the most were people who actually had never interacted with One Piece before.
Yeah.
Like those people were like the people I got the best feedback from, and were like, this was awesome, I want to see a second season.
Oh no, yeah. Because as a One Piece fan, it wasn't the perfect adaptation, but it did what it needed to do, and it got like the spirit of One Piece.
Yeah, across really
because
well.
I will say the one thing that I was terrified going into the live action adaptation was, how are they going to make these silly parts of this world work? We've seen a Cowboy Bebop adaptation. We've seen adaptations that on paper should work well in live action, and yet here comes this cartoony ass anime. How are you going to make this work? And I think one genius thing they did was literally there was zero irony in the delivery of this world, right? I was so scared of some like Marvel-esque dialogue being like, yo, did I just see a clown over there? Is that a clown right there? But they were 100% serious with the delivery to sell you on this world. Even though some of the CG looked a little bit cartoony, it didn't matter. So what it ended up feeling like when I was watching it felt like watching a stage play. So sometimes, you go to a stage play, you have to like immerse yourself in the world, even though they don't have like the
fanciest things,
the fanciest effects already or everything. But the characters and the actors 100% commit to the props that they have to sell you on this storyline. And that, I think, that gave off the same energy as what One Piece was doing, where you had all of these different wacky stuff going on within this live action TV series, but everyone was fully committed into making this world feel like it exists. There was no ironic jokes, no self-referential, this is a silly thing happening. They 100% committed to that.
No, I totally agree. I think the fact that I think they embraced the goofiness of the One Piece world that One Piece itself had. They embraced that in a nice way, where, as you say, without making fun of it. Like, it was taking itself seriously just at the right level, I think.
Exactly.
Which was very important.
Yeah, it took itself seriously when, everyone... Yeah, the only time it was funny was not because it was making fun of itself, but it was because when something funny was happening within the world, you know what I mean?
Like, legitimately, yeah. I do agree. I'm very curious. I think the second season now is going to be a really big, I guess, milestone and the kind of pointer in one or the other direction, because the East Blue arguably is still like as we talked about, the most human and normal stuff, and then Buggy and Luffy are like the wildest things going on.
I just want to see Chopper, man. I just want to see Chopper.
But not only Chopper, I think stuff like, we're starting to get like Smoker and Crocodile, like Logia fruit users.
Yeah.
I don't, like, honestly, legitimately, if you told me to do it, for example, with like Logia fruits, smoke and sand, do you just go hyper realistic like Marvel with it? Do you just kind of make it not as realistic, more like stylized to make it? I don't even know what the right answer there honestly is.
I think it doesn't really. What I realized, like going back to the stage play thing, it doesn't really matter as long as they just commit to something.
As you sell it,
yeah, because even like Luffy's rubber effects, they don't look photorealistic. They do look a little goofy sometimes, especially when he's doing the Gatling gun. Yeah. But then you just get used to it because they take it seriously. So you take it seriously as well. So I think that's the only thing that really matters.
Yeah, I think exactly what you're saying. I think selling the immersion is really like the maker, because I think we all know as humans, even if you have, like, if the story is captivating enough, like, you can even have a fucking, like, paper cutouts, like, make you cry or something.
Exactly.
Like some stop motion montage, and you're, like, bawling your eyes out. So, again, I think the storytelling really is what makes or breaks it in the end. Something that maybe Marvel could and Disney could probably learn from a little bit. That being said, do you want a quick refill on your massive sake cup?
Do it.
In the break we took earlier, Gant fell in love with these.
Oh, I did. I was just saying in the break that I have such a core memory of Shanks drinking from this massive cup.
Cheers.
Because I was like, it's left such an impression on me as a kid.
We talked about how it's actually quite laudable. Not only did he have a cup that's like as big as his body, but also he was drinking this without spilling anything.
Yeah, he had minimal spillage. If this was like real life, he would have gone like that, and he would have had like a waterfall of sake come down on him.
The poor man also drank like 2 bottles of sake in like one gulp.
Yeah,
like. The real reason Shanks dies is because of liver damage.
That's where his haki comes from.
Just his liver. Yeah. It's like Shanks is nerfed because he needs to constantly repair his liver with his haki.
Okay. One thing I want to bring up, because this is a One Piece podcast. I remember a while ago, and I got some like negative comments, right? Because I made this comment
on the internet,
right? Because I talked about on Trash Taste once, where I talked about how One Piece was, back in my day, the least popular of like the big 3, right? And it's insane that now One Piece has gone on for so long, right? That it is the flagship of pretty much everything. The only way you can take a new series seriously is if it reaches One Piece level of sales, right? That's it. That's One Piece is the benchmark. And it's insane to me that, at least in the West, because like that, I don't know when you got into One Piece, but when I got into One Piece, we were the clowns of the anime community.
I think especially in the West, Naruto was just the biggest thing.
Like on top. Bleach was like the cool older cousin. Yeah. And meanwhile, there were like the One Piece fans.
The devil fruit.
Yeah. Meanwhile, when there was the One Piece fan being like, "Oh yeah, what are you playing with? Your little Stretch Armstrong toy." Oh,
it's almost a little bit like the Hydra meme.
And I would like to say, for the record, there really was a time where One Piece, being a One Piece fan, you were the underdog. You literally had to fight tooth and nail to get taken seriously by the wider anime community.
It was good putting buying stocks, One Piece stocks early.
But now you say you're a One Piece fan, people are like, oh,
respect.
Of course. Oh, you're a One Piece fan? Oh yeah. I too like having vanilla ice cream, and I'm like, part of me is like, no, you don't understand the struggle we had to go through. Because I remember when I was a One Piece fan, every time I'd mention One Piece, I'd have to preface it being like, no, it's not a silly cartoon.
Yeah.
I swear to God, it's not a silly cartoon. Because you look at the art style back, and I think the 4Kids dub of One Piece did so much in like just ruining the image of One Piece.
Yeah, cementing that in. Yeah.
But it's insane to think how much the One Piece audience has grown to the point where it is just mainstream now, right? It is untouched. Like,
I think it's really just outgrown like the competition around it, honestly.
Yeah, I mean it's been around for longer.
And it has the not only has it just been running longer, it also, instead of dropping off, and
it keeps getting
it just keeps getting better. That's
better.
Legitimately what is happening, I think. Yeah.
Well, at least it's maintained its like level of quality, throughout, without like, there are some peaks, there are some troughs, but for the most part, you still have, if you're a One Piece fan back then, you still get the same amazing moments with One Piece now.
I think the cycle like closes a little bit with what we talked about in the beginning. It's just the fact that the longer the story goes on, instead of first of all, I think it does rise in quality also, but not only that, the more you watch, the better previous parts of One Piece get, just because they become more and more relevant and things tie in really nicely. Yeah. So it's almost like, for example, now, like if you watch Skypiea for the first time, you're maybe like, didn't like this. Like if you're a One Piece fan now reading week to week, you're like, this was like the best freaking arc of
this
all
was the
time.
Canon event. We didn't know what we were eating back then.
So I think that is like part of the magic. In retrospect, stuff gets just better and better.
I mean, my favorite. You mentioned your favorite arc was like Enies Lobby. Mine is still probably the Whitebeard War.
Marineford,
Marineford. That was. That was one of my favorite arcs in Shonen period.
It's just.
I think several arcs in One Piece are my favorite arcs in Shonen period.
Easy.
But I think what I like about One Piece is that there are some major arcs, but even like some really small arcs can leave such a big impact on the audience and just on the wider world as well. You asked me right at the beginning. We went on this huge tangent about I think one of the first questions you asked me was, when did you really feel like this investment in like the wider world? And I think I was pretty late in the One Piece as a One Piece fan to really truly appreciate the wider world, because there had been a lot of lore stuff anyway, but it was the Reverie for me. The Reverie it wasn't like the lore drops, it was seeing characters come back and just interacting with each other. I was like,
politically also,
I was like, this is such, oh my god, this is such a weird feeling, because
the Reverie chapters were absolutely I don't think anyone missed out on it, because when it happened, it was like the biggest hype ever, right? But not only, as you say, you do get all these characters together. On top of that, you get the reveal of Imu. You get the giant freezer, the giant head, and everything, and you kind of start to realize like all these little factors of, okay, there is way more going on here than we all ever thought, and suddenly. Again, it's all these weird, quirky little details that you didn't think about too much that suddenly start tying in, like the giant bridge that Robin went to during the time skip. Like, what's up with that? The world is flooding. Like, maybe now building a giant bridge makes more sense, right? Yeah. What's up with the giant gates that connect to Enies Lobby? We haven't gotten anything new on that, but it's going to be very relevant in some way or form. Or the big hole under Enies Lobby. Like, now we've seen... Lulusia Kingdom get destroyed by the ancient weapon. You're like, that there is maybe some lore to this, right?
Yeah, maybe there's some backstory to that. And I think Reverie was the first time that previously I'd gotten hype over whatever the hype moment of the self-contained arc was. That was the first time I got hyped at lore drops on like the wider world, and because it's not because of like one particular lore drop, because we've had that before. Like, her name escapes me. What's the mermaid princess?
Oh, Shirahoshi.
Shirahoshi, that's it.
Poseidon.
Yeah. When it got revealed that she was Poseidon, I was like, oh shit, okay. That was a big reveal. But with Reverie, it just felt like every chapter for like 5 chapters, I was like, no way, this is a big lore drop, and then it happened again, and then again, and
the entire time,
yeah.
I will say, in part, that's why in retro, even while it was going on, I liked Egghead Island a lot. But in retrospect, especially, it had so many nuggets. Like, there was so much crazy stuff going on lore-wise.
Yeah.
how did you see Vegapunk's message? Because while it was going on, people were starting to complain really hard because it went on for like 10 chapters. And I think it's very different if you just read it in one go and you're like, what? And like, but like week to week, it was like, oh, he's still talking. It's still happening.
I could definitely. This is like one of the times where I'm so glad I'm not a weekly reader, because he would. I remember reading those chapters, and then he would be like, "All right, I'm about to drop the biggest truth bomb of all." Chapter ends. Yeah, he says one sentence. Cut to like other people doing reacting, shit. And I'm like, no, just give it all to me at once, please. What are you doing? Why are you edging me like this? Please stop.
We're like, which was really, again, I think if you read it in one go, seeing all of these characters that we haven't seen in a while reacting to the news is really cool. Just like if you have to wait 2 weeks, and then the chapter you get is just like eight different pages of reactions.
Yeah, which just shows it just shows. I would say like a different kind of power creep in the One Piece world, where you had the early chapters where you'd have these chapters where you'd see people reacting and it'd be like 1 or 2, maybe 3 people. Now jump 20 years later, we got to get the entire world reacting. How long does that take? That takes an entire chapter just for like half the cast.
Just reaction shots from everyone.
Yeah, like some of my favorite chapters of One Piece are, this is one thing I love about One Piece. It's the post arc chapters, especially holy shit, like the post arc Wano before Egghead. Oh my god! I feel like I already love the post arc chapters pre-time skip when you just see like the new bounties or everything, but it seems like the post arc in the new world have just been insane.
Because when I was just catching up with everything that's going on, so I guess you mean like the Blackbeard fight, and like the second part of the Reverie.
Exactly. Yeah. And now we're not just seeing people reacting about, maybe a new bounty. We are seeing world-shattering events happening in like the post
all the time,
the post island arcs all the time.
I gotta ask, what was your impression of like the Gorosei reveal?
I mean, was this during the Egghead arc?
Yeah, where they all get like summoned with like these weird summoning circles, and then it's like, are those devil fruits? Are they just legitimately just demons straight up?
So when they summoned everyone, and when I was a bit confused. if I'm being honest, I was like, oh, I thought they'd be introducing all of the elders, one at a time, as you do with One Piece, and then they all just fucking summoned, and they became these like shadow things. I mean, I thought it was cool, right? But I was like, damn, you are revealing all of the different elders all at once.
Yeah, right away.
And I wasn't sure. Because they were referred to as like devils, so I was like, is this something to do with like the devil fruits? I didn't look too deeply into it, so I don't know if there's like a lot of theories around that.
I mean, it's really hard to say. I think there's like 2 big things that, at least for me, make it seem like they might not be devil fruits. Mm-hmm. The first thing would be like the summoning circle stuff, and just the fact that they're all like these like yokai creatures, right? It seems like, okay, is this like a different power system almost again? Yeah, where like they got these powers, because at the end of the arc we get Imu draining Saturn almost from his power. So is this like something that he or whoever Imu is bestowed upon them? Yeah. And the other thing is that we have this one shot, which again could be a mistake, but I think always rather assume it's not.
just always assume it's not.
Yeah, of Saturn like in his spider form jumping across the water, and as a devil fruit user, obviously, like touching seawater should not technically work that way.
I didn't. That? I didn't notice that.
It's when he like chases after the Sunny. Yeah.
Damn, I completely forgot. I completely blanked on that. This is why I'm a casual One Piece scrub. I sometimes just miss like the little details.
maybe you should just spend like multiple hours a week analyzing the chat. I strongly recommend doing
I feel like I should have got that, but yeah, I mean that's why when the big reveal about this being a post-apocalyptic world, I did not see that coming.
I mean, the thing is also it's again we get answers and stuff is happening that somewhat feels like we're going into the end game, but at the same time we keep revealing new stuff. Like, yes, we got the Gorosei revealed, but clearly Luffy and Co aren't strong enough to even deal proper damage to them yet. No. And then we got the whole introduction of the Holy Knight suddenly, which is apparently this elite squad of fighters that we just didn't know existed.
because like now that Luffy is one of the emperors of the sea, you gotta
up
like
the level.
you gotta up the level from there.
Yeah.
As he gets closer and closer to the end.
Which actually just, I mean, without spoiling anything, which is just now that we're in Elbaf, the land of giants, and obviously there are like, I mean, very minor spoilers, giants that we've already met in the story, right? Like, you've seen Dorian Broggy come to Egghead Island.
Yeah.
Like it gets now really interesting. We haven't seen anything major yet, so I'm really curious how the power scaling for that's gonna work.
See, I don't know if this is like I don't know if this is like my dumb brain or whatever. It probably is my dumb brain. I still don't properly get Gear 5. I know it's powerful. I know the concept of Gear 5, but how powerful is it is something that I can never like wrap my head around.
And I think that's very much on purpose, and I think maybe because I am too deep in it.
Yeah.
I think people just assume like, hey, like Luffy's final form, maybe he'll get some more stuff. First of all, it's still not 100% clear if this is like we're being led to believe that it's Luffy's awakening, but officially we don't really know if that is actually what's going on or not.
Right.
Like Luffy just said, "This is my peak." He didn't say, "I'm just awakened." so for all we know, because we now know he's a zone fruit, like this could just be his regular ass like transforming into the creature thing.
Yeah, right.
Like, does Luffy have a hybrid form? He should have theoretically. So. And Luffy himself obviously doesn't even he still thinks he has rubber powers, right?
Yeah,
technically.
right.
So
exactly.
I personally think that there's going to be a lot more to Gear 5 and his Nika form that we just had. Like, this is just the beginning, and it's going to take Luffy actually finding out that he misunderstood his own devil fruit.
I would assume so, considering considering the new enemies that are being built up, and that we still have a long way to go until the actual end of One Piece. But yeah, I mean, when Gear 5 was revealed, it was, number one, I really, really loved that this was a massive reveal that went a different direction to your typical power scaling stuff. The downside of that was me being like, so how powerful is it actually?
Yeah.
How do I quantify this in my mind? Because it gives him more freedom, and he does like Looney Tune stuff, and I'm like, what does that actually mean in terms of like the strength of it in the One Piece world?
I think there is going to be a lot more that we're going to learn about, are learning right now, but also going to learn about Nika and what in general what devil fruits actually are. Again, is like now, for example, the possibility that devil fruits are just straight up technology is definitely like something that's real, because we do know like we were like futuristic space travel.
I mean, I loved it when they revealed that, because I have such a soft spot for lost technology. I don't know why. It's just like a trope that I never get bored of.
I keep bringing up the story, and I think like usually people haven't read. Have you read The Wheel of Time?
No.
Okay. So again, I think the audience is probably tired of me bringing this up, but it's a similar twist where it's basically this big fantasy epic.
All right.
And there's like the three ages, and like at some point, like the good guys, like they got too power hungry, broke the world. Now everything's like kind of like reset to like you have like that trope.
Yeah.
But also the author kind of left all these little hints throughout the story that aren't actually like super relevant to the main storyline, but you kind of start piecing together that world, the fantasy world that we thought is just like magic and like this classic map and everything, like that turned out to be probably our world, and we just got more and more technologically advanced, which kind of like unlocked these like almost like magic like powers.
Right.
Then like humanity almost got too technologically advanced, everything went to hell, and now it like the entire story you think, oh, we're in this fantasy magic world, turns out it's just kind of post-apocalyptic
world.
And some of the technology remains kind of as part of this magic system.
Yeah, because there's a few anime that I think are definitely in the same vein of that. That I've seen, and every time I see one, I don't know, something about lost technology.
It tickles your brain.
Tickles the imagination.
Yeah, it really
like,
does.
Ooh. Like I don't necessarily like post-apocalyptic settings, but as soon as you throw in lost technology, magic setting, I'm like, all right.
So good.
I need to know. I need to know.
Have you seen the Castle in the Sky, the Ghibli movie?
I haven't actually.
Okay,
no.
I think there is like, One Piece definitely took some inspiration from it, and it kind of is like a very similar premise. So I recommend that you check it out. I feel like you'd like it. Yeah.
Yeah, because the ones that come to my mind, there's this old anime called Scarred Princess. That is basically something that takes place in a fantasy world where they kind of like drop hints as well. Trigun as well.
Oh yeah, Trigun very much.
Trigun, which was more like it was so cool seeing this sci-fi spaghetti western world, and then you realize, oh, this is like fully sci-fi, not just like a stylistic choice.
Yeah,
anytime I get to see that trope, I loved it. So when they revealed that in One Piece, my mind was just like this. This opens so many doors, so many possibilities. They have a mech now. What is going on?
Dude, it's just, there's like so much fun stuff where like now you can kind of ask, okay, well, we know the world's being constantly flooded, like sea levels were a lot lower.
Yeah.
What about the Red Line? What about the Grand Line? Like there's, for example, some really fun videos and theories about, is the One Piece planet way bigger than our Earth, for example?
Right.
And like have had really fun theories like that we've been talking about in my team. Like I brought this up in a recent podcast as well, like the idea that the One Piece planet might be like something like a Dyson sphere, that the planet itself is artificial.
And
then like,
that'd be really, really cool.
Yeah, and the sun god is more about like the actual sun at the core.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Because one thing I always respect about the One Piece universe is that no matter how stupid the idea may conceptually seem, Oda just finds a way to do it.
Yeah.
You know.
One really fun thing, are you aware of, and this doesn't go only for One Piece because I know other manga could do this as well, are you aware of all the wordplay stuff? Like it's called in Japanese Goro Awase. And it's basically when you use like what the numbers sound like. For example, in One Piece, a classic one is the Gomu,
right,
which would be like 5, 6.
Right.
So Go and Mutsu. And so, for example, like a lot of like Luffy's bounties have like the 5, 6, 5, 6. And so in One Piece, there's like a ton of these little like textual and numerical hints that Oda drops. And people are like, sometimes you put out a theory. And to be fair, I think sometimes theories are just out there for the fun of it. And I always go in with the expectation that it's wrong.
Yeah.
But I think people often comment like, oh, you know, like you're too deep or something. It's like, nah, dude, like Oda and some other mangaka, they go nuts with these like little hints that they just put into the language, or like why something is designed a certain way. Yeah.
No, I didn't know that. I mean, now that you explain it, it makes sense. But okay, have you ever gone down a rabbit hole that you've had to like realize, looking back on, is like the completely wrong direction, or have things not been?
Oh, probably tons of times. I'm pretty sure. I'm trying to think of like a concrete example.
Because I'm trying to think if there's any One Piece theories that have just been.
Oh yeah,
like,
I mean, I think I had like a theory which I was very passionate about, which was that it was partly correct. I had like a theory that Luffy might have a different devil fruit actually, which isn't the rubber fruit, which I guess that part. But I was like, wouldn't it be cool if Luffy's fruit was actually like the Sun Wukong fruit, for example, or the Hanuman fruit, right?
Oh, right.
Or like, because obviously Luffy has the same inspiration like Goku, like definitely based on the journey to the West.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously that ended up not being the case.
Yeah. Because it's the thing that's hard about One Piece is that you don't know what details will become relevant.
Oh yeah,
you have to assume that everything
could be
a piece of the puzzle.
I think the ideas that most constantly are just, because a lot of the theories that I've been working on also, they're just like, so I guess long term, that like you just don't know yet if it could be wrong or not. I think that the ones that like get disproven the easiest and the quickest are speculating if someone's going to join the crew, because I was like, this person is like definitely going to join the crew, right? And then it turns out, actually no. I mean, like Carrot is a great, like basically the entire new world with the exception of like still not over the fact that Yamato did not join.
No, I was literally going to name drop Yamato, being like, I'm not part of the One Piece fandom, and even I saw how salty people were that they didn't join the One Piece crew.
Like Yamato was like the first time in my entire life as a like anime fan where I was like, because I'm the type of person who's like, with the waifu thing, I was always like, I kind of don't get it. When Yamato was introduced, I was like, okay, you know what? I kind of feel you guys. I kind of feel you guys.
Yeah.
And then it was like, no, we're going out to sea together, and like you can join my crew. and then it was like, actually, I'm gonna stay here and chill for a bit. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me?
Even I was surprised by that, because out of all like the everyone who joined the crew. That was like the one character who I thought, this just makes so much sense, you know. This just makes so much perfect sense. Like
such good chemistry also with everyone in the crew, yeah.
I mean, the first time I felt that, like, betrayal, I guess, was probably when Vivi didn't join.
Yeah.
But, like, you know, in the wider world, it makes perfect sense.
When I will say, like, Vivi still has a pretty decent chance of coming back. Like, now she's, like, kind of traveling towards the Straw Hats, fleeing the government, right? Now she has, like, motivation also to actually...
Yeah, I mean, Vivi for me has always remained one of my favorite Straw Hat companions.
Yeah, absolutely.
It didn't necessarily join, but still holds, like, a big place in my heart as...
Yeah, she kind of is in this, like, in-between spot where I guess she's, like, technically an honorary Straw Hat. And,
yeah.
And I guess, like, technically the same is true for Yamato, where, like, Luffy, like, she says she's gonna join up with the crew later, kind of like Jinbei, but I'm like... Why not now? Like, we're just gonna have less time with her on the crew.
Look, it's because Oda's like, I don't need another character that I need to...
Which is actually, like, I'm kind of curious, a question I'm always wondering. I'm generally don't have a lot, like, surprisingly, even though, like, as deep as I am in the story, I don't have that many things I'm, like, unhappy with.
Yeah.
The biggest thing probably for me that I wish was a bit different in One Piece is that have the crew... Basically, the entire part of the crew that joined after the East Blue Saga, I feel has been very neglected character development-wise since the time skip, with now the exception of Robin recently, but like a Frankie, a Brook, a Chopper, I feel like just don't get the same attention personally. Example,
I think it's unfortunate just because of the way, just how grand the world of One Piece is, that even if you're a part of the Straw Hat crew, you might not even get time to develop your own character or have more character moments. But I trust that just because a character hasn't had the spotlight for like years and years, that doesn't mean that they're not going to have the spotlights
at some point.
Like, you know, the moment with Robin in Egghead, I thought was just like such a beautiful moment after so many years of just, I felt like Robin just not having any moment at all. And, you know, at the end of the day, she had her moment when it felt most natural in the world of things, you know.
And I will say, like, this is a spoiler, but I hope you'll forgive me. She does actually cut her hair again for Elbaf, and she goes back to the bangs.
Let's go!
Which is, like, such a random thing to, like, make me so happy for no reason. It just looks so good. It just reminds me of her old design so much more.
The OG Robin is
for real.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's part of the reason why it felt like the longest time when the Straw Hat crew would have a fight, it'd be like, okay, the big three would have a fight or have their moment to shine.
Yeah.
And Wano was the first time that I felt like, okay, well, actually, this feels like a old school One Piece arc where everyone has their fight. Everyone is involved. Everyone has a matchup. And that was a arc that went on for 4 years. You know,
it's insane.
And I think now, because the world and the cast and everything is so big, that it's just impossible to give everyone the spotlight.
See, that's where I play a little bit devil's advocate always, where I'm like, if you have time to like flesh out, like, again, I really liked Wano as an arc, way more than I think some people did. I thought it was really good, and I really love that we gave a lot of air to like side characters like Tama, like Yasuie, who got like crucified, the guy, right? I'm like, if you already like put a lot of time aside for these side quests and these little side stories, why not spend like a little bit more time on Zoro actually being from the Shimotsuke family? Like, I'm not sure if you're aware of that. That got revealed in one of the question corners in the manga instead of actually putting it out there,
right? You
know, in Wano itself. So. Again, I'm sure there's like choices why that didn't happen, and maybe it did actually not fit into the schedule at some point.
well, I think it comes down to if every arc you need to give everyone like the same amount of time. At the end of it, it's just gonna feel like you're ticking off a checklist about, okay,
I think
Nami has
her
moment, and Usopp has his moment, and then Robin, and then you can't. It kind of like detracts on sometimes. Okay, when can we give character moments when it actually makes sense of where the Straw Hat crew
and
is.
it actually leaves an impact. I think that's a fair point.
Leaves an impact.
No, I think that's a good argument.
I think the reason the Robin moment was like so impactful for me was just like, you know, we went back to her backstory, which was fucking tragic, and then we got like, I guess, the epilogue of what that island was able to do, and it just made the gravity of that situation just hit so much more, just because it just felt so natural. And I fucking love that moment. That's such a great moment.
All right, to wrap it up a little bit, I do want to do some rapid fire questions with you.
Sure.
And they're never going to be rapid because we're probably going to get stuck pretty quickly. But
okay.
All right, let's just start with, what's your favorite character? The best question. Everyone loves.
How do I?
We can split it. What do you think? What is your favorite character personality wise, and what's your favorite character story written wise? We can split it a little bit, maybe, if that makes it easier.
I think Zoro's the real G.
Let's go.
He does the heavy carrying in the Straw Hat Crew when things goes wrong, and he is a leader in his own sense, and he's just the GOAT, honestly.
Let's go.
Like when Luffy drops the ball, he's there to pick it up,
to catch it, yeah.
And I respect it, especially like I think the moment that sold me on him even more than the end of even more than the nothing happened moment was just seeing how he resolved the Usopp. The Usopp moment,
yeah. And calling Luffy out.
Yeah, calling Luffy out on it, where he's like, if you let him join back in without any consequences, I will leave, because this is the start of the collapse of a group if we don't respect the leader. And I'm like,
let's
yo,
go,
my boy's spitting. My boy is spitting, man.
Yo.
Best girl, Robin.
Nice.
Softs. She is a woman through and through, and goddamn, we need more female characters like her.
Do you have a favorite villain?
Favorite villain? God, that is hard as well. There are so many fantastic villains. Shit, I didn't come in. Probably Doflamingo.
That's a good.
I think Doflamingo is the most interesting villain after his backstory and his ideology, and just sometimes
I think he hits like a nice sweet spot of crazy.
Yeah, and he has some of the best quotes in the entire series as well.
Yeah,
his quotes in the Marineford arc, just that is like
the winners write the history. Yeah,
the winners write the history. That is like such a banger quote. I'm like, God,
no, he knows what's up.
Damn it, man.
I hope he comes back. I'm pretty sure he will come back. I feel like Crossguild is like on a strong track record right now to recruit all the former warlords.
Yeah.
So I could see Dofi like going in there as well, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, just seeing Crocodile back as well.
That's been so good.
Impel Down for the first time, I was like, oh my God, yeah. I love Crocodile as well. He was a great character.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, having him back, I guess that's a good question. Do you think there's a realistic chance that Buggy will become Pirate King?
I think there is, actually. I genuinely think that it might not even be Luffy. I think it would actually be on brand just to make it Buggy in some way, shape, or form. Where maybe Luffy is really the person that discovers One Piece, but it's Buggy that like takes
where everyone thinks it's Buggy.
Where Buggy is the one that takes the credit for it.
Yeah,
I think that might be very on brand.
Just failing upwards.
Exactly. And that would be very on point for the world of One Piece as well.
I think that would be so hilarious.
Yeah, that would be hilarious.
Next question: what devil fruit would you eat if you could like pick any, just for your daily life, not even for like surviving in the One Piece world?
There are so many. There are so many devil fruits out there.
The jacket fruit.
Sorry,
the jacket fruit.
The jacket fruit.
It's where we can wear other people as a jacket.
I forgot that there was a thing. What is a devil fruit that would be most convenient for real life?
I mean, me personally, if you need some more time to think, I personally love the phoenix fruit, because I guess it gives you like these like passive healing powers. You can fly. You can just have like a medical kit. Basically, you're like a walking and talking medical kit.
Yeah.
Fast travel. Fire. I don't know.
I have Vegapunk's devil fruit.
Oh, the brain fruit.
The brain.
You
brain
walk
fruit.
around.
I just want all of the information. No one can stop me from gathering all of the information in the world.
Are you gonna get a lobectomy? What is it? What do you call it? What's the word for cutting your brain out?
Lobotomy.
Lobotomy. Thank you so much.
Vegapunk had it down, man. He had efficiency down to. Imagine how much work you could get done splitting yourself into like multiple beings and multiple personalities, and being like, yo, think about all the YouTube content.
We can produce. The YouTube farm is created.
100%. If Mr. Beast is a One Piece fan, he would want Vegapunk.
Yeah.
He would want Vegapunk's Devil Fruit.
My God.
He wouldn't have to hire anyone. He would just make 10 different Mr. Beasts.
Or get the toy fruit. Create mindless slaves that no one remembers. The content farm.
Oh man, just content farm. How do we go against the content farm AI slop?
Make our own.
Yeah, make our own.
Let's go.
That's it.
That's a good answer. I like that a lot. Do you think there is a chance that a Straw Hat will die by the end of the story? And if so, who?
No. If one person is going to die, it's probably going to be Luffy, but...
Oh, I was going to ask. Okay, this is a bit of a reoccurring, not even a joke, a reoccurring theme, and people in the comments love to say that I really want to kill Usopp. But hear me out.
What are you going to against my boy?
But hear me out. He wants to be a brave warrior of the sea.
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be the most tragic and best moment in One Piece ever if Usopp genuinely gives his life to save Luffy, becomes a brave warrior of the sea that way, and then kind of fuels the end of the story?
I don't know, because to me...
Do you think that's too much?
To me, with character deaths, Oda has already obviously been very, very, especially the first character death being Ace was like, how long did he build that up, when he'd had so many opportunities to kill other characters off. I don't know if any other character death to Luffy will have as big of an impact as Ace. I think Usopp will be on the same would be on the same level, but I don't think that Oda would pull that same trick twice of just having someone close to Luffy, just slip out of his grasp. I don't think that's going to happen, and I think if it will happen, it is going to be Luffy himself. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like there should at least be some major deaths still in the story, because I do feel like there need to be stakes around, right? But I think fair point, because obviously touching the Straw Hats is a really big one.
Yeah.
Not only from a storytelling perspective, but I guess also merchandise.
Merchandise. I mean, if Oda has already planned it, then he's already planned it. But I don't know, something about the vibe. Just I can't see it happening. Yeah. It's the vibe that I feel like. I can't see that happening. I'll be very surprised if it happens.
All right.
And but yeah,
I don't think that's a fair take.
Yeah. I don't really see it happening. Yeah.
Okay, last question. Is there something in the story that you really think or really want to happen?
Really want to happen?
Like, what's the One Piece? What do you think is the One Piece?
What is the One Piece? Honestly, we're getting to see more of her anyway. But I just want to see more of Vivi. I would love for Vivi to join the crew back.
Nice.
Even if it's just a temporary time, I would love for her to get back with the Straw Hat crew just for a little bit. Give me one more adventure. Give me one more arc with Vivi, or maybe some of the other old companions. Just bring them back on the ship.
There's the thumbnail. Giga confirms.
Vivi is joining the Straw Hat crew. Again. I am 20 years late, but it's finally happening. I am saying it now.
We're here.
Yes.
All right, dude. Thanks so much for coming out. Of course, channel is linked. The small and growing channel Giga is linked in the description below.
Thank you very much.
Anywhere else where people can find you and something you want to see people?
Watch me on Trash Taste is another podcast as well where
small and upcoming
where we talk about not anime, even though it's technically an anime podcast. But I think this is the first time I've in-depthly talked about One Piece on a podcast before, which says a lot considering that I already have a podcast.
Nice. Maybe one day when Connor and Joey catch up,
we
can have the Trash Taste One Piece
maybe
episode.
One day when they catch up.
Never. Nice. Well, I really appreciate you coming on.
No worries,
this was a lot of fun.
Thank you very much. This was a lot of fun. This this 2 hours went very fast.
That's true, yeah. Maybe we got to do the next one then when Elbaf ends in
Elbaf
4
ends.
years.
Exactly.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you so much, guys. If you want to support the channel a little bit and get early access to these podcasts and a lot of other cool perks, makes a lot of difference for everyone who supports on Patreon. Link for